My name is Fern, and I am 28 years old. For most of my life, my family talked about me the way you talk about a cloud that won't clear, as something that lingered that hadn't resolved itself into anything useful. Last October, at my brother's engagement party at a golf and country club in Oakville, I spent the first hour restacking a charcuterie board while he told his future father-in-law, at a volume he did not bother to lower, that I was between things right now, still finding my he. I smiled at the aged cheddar. I said nothing. He had no idea that the man he had been chasing for 18 months, the managing director, whose single signature could pull my father's contracting company back from the edge it was balanced on, was going to walk through those clubhouse doors that evening, bypass my brother's outstretched hand completely, and say my name first. I grew up in Mississauga, in the kind of subdivision where every driveway gets freshly sealed each spring and nobody uses the front door except for strangers and mail. My father built his construction and contracting firm over 30 years with a leased pickup truck and a municipal paving contract. It was solid, unglamorous work: city, tents, rec center rooftops, strip mall parking lots. And he was proud of it the way people of his generation are proud of things, not by talking about it, but by treating it like a country whose citizenship was the most important thing a person could hold. My brother was always going to take it over. That was never a discussion. It was simply true, the way Thanksgiving is in October and winter lasts longer than you'd like. 5 years older than me, he had been installed at the company at 22 with a VP title and a salary that bore no relationship to his output. He played golf on Fridays and called it client relations. He attended industry luncheons. He forwarded emails. The company ran because 40 people who had been there long enough to know what they were doing kept it running. My brother understood this at some level, I think, which is probably why he needed everyone else not to. I enrolled in veterinary medicine at the University of Toronto when I was 18. For 2 years I did what was expected, studied, passed clinicals, attended every required lab session without complaint. But I could not stop thinking about a problem that had nothing to do with my coursework: how badly fragmented pet healthcare was. Missed appointments, insurance claims falling through administrative gaps, veterinary practices running on fax machines in 2017. There was no coherent system tying any of it together, and every week I saw the cost of that. In money and time, in animals who didn't get seen because the clinic's scheduling software crashed or an insurance pre-authorization went missing. I started building a solution in my apartment in Scarborough after class and on weekends. By December of my second year, I had a working prototype. By February, I had 3 GTA clinics piloting it for free and asking me to add features faster than I could build them. I left school in the spring. My father sat across from me at the kitchen table, with the controlled expression of a man who is working very hard not to say the first thing that comes to mind. My mother cried, once at the beginning of the conversation, once near the end when she sensed she hadn't changed anything. My brother was home for the weekend and leaned against the counter with a glass of orange juice and said, "Some people just can't finish what they start." He was 23. He had never started anything. I moved to Kensington Market, which my family described to relatives as a rough area, by which they meant it had a Portuguese cheese shop and a record store within walking distance, and felt like a city rather than a suburb. I worked. I got rejected from every early-stage funding conversation I entered. I worked again. I found a co-founder through a veterinary tech forum, a methodical, quietly brilliant operations person named Soren, who had left a logistics startup in Waterloo and wanted to build something with a longer half-life. We called the company Pawpath. The first 2 years were exactly as hard as everyone tells you they'll be, and harder in ways nobody thinks to mention. But by 25, I had a company operating across 70 veterinary clinics in Ontario, with a pet insurance partnership with one of the country's largest underwriters. By 27, Pawpath was in over 300 clinics across 5 provinces. We had a waiting list of practices trying to get onboarded, and we had quietly caught the attention of Rideau Capital Partners, a pension-backed investment fund based in Ottawa that specialized in healthcare infrastructure. Their managing director, a careful and precise man named Mr. Renaud, had been watching our quarterly numbers for 2 years. My family believed I worked in tech support. I did not correct them. In the early years, it was superstition. Naming a fragile thing too early felt like tempting the universe. After it became real, I realized my family's interest in my life was not curiosity. It was scorecard maintenance. They wanted to know how I was doing so they could locate me on a hierarchy that already had its top position filled. Telling them the truth would not have changed the hierarchy, it would only have forced them to work harder to diminish what I'd built. Privacy was simpler. The engagement party was in the third week of October. The club had dark wood paneling and a dining room that smelled like carpet and old money. My mother had booked the private room and filled it with cream roses and 60 of my father's business contacts. Because in our family, every personal milestone is a networking event wearing better clothes. I was asked to arrive 2 hours early to help coordinate setup. My brother arrived 20 minutes before the guests. He moved through the room with the ease of a man who has never once questioned whether he belonged in it. He was wearing a new suit, navy, expensive, the lapels slightly wider than was quite current, and he was radiant with the particular confidence of someone who has told the same flattering story about himself long enough to stop distinguishing it from memory. He shook hands. He laughed at things that weren't funny. He introduced his fiancée, Greta, to people by leading with her father's position at a Calgary energy firm before he mentioned her name. Greta smiled with the practiced warmth of someone who had been managing this for the length of their relationship and had made her peace with it. When my brother finally reached the charcuterie table, he was with Greta's father, and one of my father's longtime business associates, a man who had known my brother since childhood and was watching him with the expression of someone sitting through a production they've already seen. "There she is," my brother said with the tone of someone introducing a mildly unusual houseplant. "My sister, she's been helping us get the room together, very hands-on." He smiled at me. "She's between things at the moment, you know how it is." Greta's father made a polite, sympathetic sound. "Takes real self-awareness to step back and reassess when something isn't working," my brother continued, helping himself to a piece of prosciutto. "Not everyone can admit that." He patted my arm once with 2 fingers and steered Greta's father toward the bar. The older family associate looked at the table, then at me and said nothing, which was the kindest available response. The catering manager found me 15 minutes later about the final invoice, $460, the cheese, the meats, the garnish, the service charge. I paid it with the card I kept in my coat pocket. Plain black, no logo, the kind issued to corporate accounts, and signed without making anything of it. My brother was currently explaining to a cluster of guests the details of a commercial development project in Hamilton, a mixed-use build, an institutional investor, a partnership that would transform my father's regional contracting firm into something with genuine national reach. He had been telling this story at every family gathering since the previous spring. He said the investor was Rideau Capital Partners. He used the managing director's name with the casual familiarity of someone who will call Skopsash by name when they are not in the room and has learned not to do it when they are. Rideau Capital had been in early-stage discussions with Pawpath for 11 months. The draft term sheet was on my laptop at home, 40 million Canadian dollars. I put the receipt in my coat pocket and went to refill the water glasses. About 40 minutes in, I noticed the young woman on the far side of the room, mid-20s, a blazer that had the quality of something chosen to be noticed by the right people, a glass of sparkling water she was holding more than drinking. She worked for Rideau Capital. I had seen her in the background of 2 video calls with the investment team. I didn't know her name. My brother had spent months cultivating Rideau's junior staff in the belief that proximity to the lower floors of an organization eventually becomes access to the upper ones. That is not how it works, but I had not told him so. She registered me at the same moment I placed her. I watched her eyes travel to the small enamel pin on my lapel, a paw print inside a maple leaf, the pin that Pawpath's founding team and board members wore. Unremarkable to everyone in that room except someone who knew exactly what it represented. She knew. The change in her face was small and contained, the adjustment of someone trained to absorb surprises without broadcasting them. But I saw the moment everything she had assumed about the woman, standing next to the cheese board, got quietly reconstructed. She looked at the pin. She looked at my face. She glanced at my brother, who was mid-sentence about Hamilton's development corridor. She looked at me one more time. I turned back to the water glasses. I heard her set her glass down, murmur something to the person beside her, and move toward the hallway near the cloakroom. She had her phone out before she cleared the doorway. My brother noticed. Where is she going? She's here specifically to see what we're doing. I need her networking in this room, not taking personal calls. He straightened his tie, probably stepping out to update someone. That's what happens when a room makes the right impression. I said nothing. The next 25 minutes were among the quietest I have spent. My brother kept talking. He revised the Hamilton numbers upward as he went, the way you do when you are not worried about being verified. My father came to stand beside me at the window near the end of it, and told me quietly that he was having a document drawn up, something to formalize that I had no standing in the family business, to make the structure clear going forward, to ensure there was no confusion down the road. You might want to wait on that, I said. There's nothing to wait for, he said and returned to his guests. The main door opened 6 minutes later. Mr. Renault had the presence of a man who has spent years in rooms where the decisions are real, and has stopped being impressed by the rooms themselves. He was compact, precise silver at the temples, wearing a coat that drew no attention and had probably cost more than my first year's salary at any job I'd held before Pawpath. He let the room register him. There is a quality shift in the air when a particular kind of person enters, and began moving. My brother saw him and lit up the way a circuit lights when it completes. He was across the room in 5 strides, hand already extended, voice pitched to the frequency of delighted coincidence. Mr. Renault, what an incredible surprise. So glad you could make it tonight. I've been meaning to reach your office all week about the Hamilton proposal. The updated projections are really compelling. If you have even 5 minutes. Mr. Renault looked at my brother's hand. Then he looked at my brother's face, with the polite, even expression of a man encountering someone he cannot quite place. Yes, he said and kept walking. My brother's hand stayed in the air. Mr. Renault moved across the room past the bar, past the roses, past the small attentive cluster of my father's associates and stopped in front of me. He extended his hand, not the social handshake of a party, the grip of someone who has made a decision and is glad to confirm it in person. Fern, he said. I had no idea you'd be here. I've been wanting to talk through the Q3 insurance onboarding numbers directly. The retention rate at the 90-day mark is genuinely not what we typically see at this stage of scale. We were happy with how that came together, I said. Soren rebuilt the onboarding sequence in August. We talked for 40 minutes. I do not remember much of what was happening behind me. I was focused on the conversation, which was a good one, the kind that moves quickly because both people are thinking rather than waiting. At some point, I became aware that the room had gone quieter than it should have been, with the particular quality of people watching something they can't explain. Before he left, Mr. Renault held my hand for a moment longer than the handshake required. Monday, he said, bring Sorensen, we'll finish this properly. After he was gone, the room resumed, but differently, lower, more careful, with the awareness that something had shifted and no one was yet sure by exactly how much. My brother found me at the coat check as the evening ended. He had been drinking steadily for the last hour. How do you know him, he said. It came out as an accusation wearing the shape of a question. I started a company, I said. He's been in our investment discussions for almost a year. Something crossed his face. Not quite anger, not quite recognition, something between them that hadn't found a name for itself yet. One meeting doesn't mean anything, he said. He's coming Monday to sign, I said. 40 million. I collected my coat and walked out into the October night. He called at 7:15 the next morning. I was already awake. I am always awake by 6 on Sundays. It is a habit the early startup years built and never dismantled. I let the phone ring 3 times. You need to call Renault. No greeting. His voice had the tight, stripped quality of someone operating on no sleep and high cortisol. Tell him the Hamilton proposal is further along than the current paperwork shows. You have a relationship with his office now. That's all I need. Just a word from you. 2 minutes of your time. I'm not going to do that, I said. You owe this family. I don't, I said. A pause. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped, lower, more deliberate, the way it gets when he has rehearsed something overnight. Here's what happens if you don't, he said. At brunch today, I'm going to tell everyone exactly what you've been. That you borrowed money from Dad 6 years ago and never paid it back. That you cut off contact with this family while they worried. That whatever you're claiming to have built, if it's even real, was done on the back of their support and you've spent 6 years pretending otherwise. I'll make sure every person at that table understands what kind of person you actually are. I put the kettle on. My father gave me $2,000 in 2019 when my car needed tires, I said. I transferred it back in February 2020. The transaction is in my banking records. Silence. Bring whatever documents you want to brunch, I said. So will I. He hung up. I finished making my tea. I opened my laptop and looked over the Rito term sheet one last time. I printed 2 documents, Pawpath's CDAR registration and an email that had come in that morning from Mr. Renault's executive assistant, confirming in writing that no proposal from my father's company was currently under active evaluation at Rito Capital Partners. I put them in a folder. I put the folder in my bag. My father had chosen a restaurant in Oakville, white tablecloths, eggs from named farms, the kind of Sunday brunch where the coffee comes in a very small cup, and everyone understands that the price of the meal is not really about the food. He had booked a private room. Both families were there. A handful of relatives, 20 people around a long table with too many water glasses. I arrived early and ordered a black coffee. When my father stood to give his toast, the room quieted with the practiced deference of people who have attended enough of these events to know the rhythm. He talked about the company. He used the word legacy 4 times. He described my brother as an investment that had finally matured, steady, ready, prepared to carry what had been built into a future the family deserved. He referenced the Hamilton project without pausing to locate its present tense, because its present tense did not exist. Then he looked at me. Not everyone in this family has taken the same road, he said, with the careful generosity of a man who considers himself patient. And that's all right. There are different ways to live. I just want us all to be clear about where the real work is happening, who's carrying this forward. He raised his glass. Your brother. The table drank. My brother lifted his own glass and looked across at me with the quiet satisfaction of a man who believes he has just received something final. Part of stepping into real leadership, he said, is having clarity about who's on the team and who isn't, who's building and who's standing on the sideline watching. He smiled, healthy for everyone. He took a sip. I put my coffee cup down. I stood up, not fast, not with any performance in it, just the movement of someone who has finished waiting. While we're being clear, I said, I should add a few things. My father's expression tightened. I opened the folder and placed the first document on the table. It was Pawpath's CDAR registration, Canada's official public securities database, showing ownership and equity structure. My name was on the first line, majority shareholder, founding director. Pawpath is mine, I said. I founded it 6 years ago. We operate in over 300 veterinary clinics across Canada. We have a pet insurance partnership with one of the country's largest underwriters. And on Monday we are completing an equity financing round with Rito Capital Partners, 40 million Canadian dollars. No one at the table moved. That is the company Mr. Renault came to find me at last night, I said. He is not in discussions with this family's construction firm. He has no record of a Hamilton development proposal that meets Rito Capital's current investment criteria. I placed the second document beside the first, the email from Mr. Renaud's office, time-stamped 8:47 that morning, confirming in one paragraph that no proposal from my father's company was under active evaluation. The filing reference number is in the header, I said. The CRA business number is on the registration. Both are public. Both are verifiable from a phone. My brother stood up. The chair scraped back hard. You printed something and put it in a folder. That could be anything. You don't have the authority to speak for Rito Capital. You can't just. Sit down, said Greta. She hadn't raised her voice, she simply said it, and my brother sat down. She looked at him with the stillness of someone watching a large and heavy thing finally settle into the place it had been heading all along. Is any of what she's saying wrong? Greta asked. He looked at the documents, he looked at her face. Is any of it wrong? She said again. He didn't answer, which was the answer. Greta folded her napkin with the slow precision of someone giving themselves time to decide how to leave a room. She set it beside her plate. She said something quiet to her parents, to her sister, to a cousin I had met only that weekend. She picked up her bag. She walked out of the private dining room without hurrying, without a scene, with the composure of a person who had just learned something important and was choosing to deal with it somewhere other than here. Her family followed her, one by one, the way guests leave a dinner party, when it becomes clear the evening has become something they didn't consent to attend. My father was looking at the documents on the table. My brother was looking at the empty chair. The company has been operating at a loss for over a year, I said, not raising my voice, not lowering it, just saying the thing that was true. The Hamilton project has no signed anchor tenant, no development permit, and no equity partner. The deal you've been promising this family for 18 months was never real. I don't know everything you told the bank. I know what you told the people in this room. My mother made a sound. My father looked up from the table and looked at my brother. My brother looked at the tablecloth. The silence that followed was the kind that arrives when a story people have been living inside finally lets them see its edges. I closed the folder. I put it back in my bag. I left enough cash on the table to cover my coffee and a fair portion of the bill, not for my family but for the servers, who had nothing to do with any of this and deserved to be tipped on the basis of the meal rather than how it had ended. I walked out through the main dining room, past tables of people eating their Sunday mornings. Families over eggs Benedict, a couple sharing a newspaper, a small child systematically dismantling a croissant with the focused intensity of important work, and out through the glass door onto Cumberland Street. The air was cold, proper October cold, the kind that doesn't apologize for itself. My phone was buzzing in my coat pocket. I didn't check it. I walked east, then south through the annex past the cafe on Bloor, where Soren and I had drafted Pawpath's first investor deck on a Sunday morning 4 years ago on 2 coffees, and no particular confidence that any of it would work out. Past the veterinary clinic on Harvard, whose waiting room scheduling system was the first thing we had ever deployed in a real practice with real patients. I stopped at the Tim Hortons on the corner of Spadina. I ordered a medium coffee, double, the way I had learned to drink it in the years when I was paying close attention to what things cost. The woman behind the counter handed it over without ceremony, the way you hand something to someone who knows what they asked for. I stood on the sidewalk with both hands around the cup. Soren was meeting me at the office at noon. We had documents to review, a call to prepare for, a Monday that was going to matter. There were things to finish and I wanted to finish them well. I had not walked into that restaurant to destroy anything. I had walked in because the alternative was letting a story keep collecting damage. My father, signing paperwork against a future that didn't exist. My brother spending money the company didn't have, a whole family year on something that was going to come apart on its own eventually. I had given them 18 months of silence. Silence had not protected any of them. It had only let the fiction compound interest for a little longer. The documents were public, the numbers were real, the rest was work they would have to do themselves. I took a sip of coffee. The city moved around me, a cyclist threading between parked cars on Spadina, the groan of a streetcar rounding the corner, the particular weekend sound of Toronto getting on with itself without needing anyone's permission. Enormous, unhurried, entirely indifferent to the small private earthquakes people carry through its streets. I started walking.